Uh-oh, folks. Derrick Johnson of the NAACP opened a big can of stupid and ate it. Recently, Derrick Johnson of the NAACP demonstrated how dumb he is by explaining the exodus of people from Democrat-leaning states as propaganda language. He is very eloquent, isn't he? He called it propaganda language, which is absolutely not true unless your name is Derrick Johnson and you're a functionally retarded mouth breather. Derrick also says Florida is seeing people move in because it is an attractive place geographically. The exodus of wealthy people, and all this whole transcript will be on Rumble with the sources as well in the description. The exodus of wealthy people who actually finished school and aren't on meth from New York to Florida has been happening for decades, but it has gone into overdrive since the COVID-19 pandemic. Derrick Johnson has a low IQ. I could also tell Derrick that California, because he used that, he said Florida is geographically attractive. I could also tell Derrick that California is geographically attractive, yet people are fleeing in droves. From the time California became a state until 2000, they always added to their number of congressional districts. In 2010, they stayed the same. I understand that it's harder to gain more as you get a lot of congressional districts, especially depending on how fast the other states are growing. However, in 2020, California lost a congressional seat, and by 2030, they are set to lose multiple seats. Let's hope we can survive until 2030. Maybe the shelves will be empty for a couple months. That'll thin the herd, and maybe that'll make some people pull their heads out of their butts. How does Derrick Johnson explain California's demise? Well, he cannot. All his responses are talking points and the race card, which is the refuge of people who have our IQ around room temperature. People are migrating to GOP-dominated states from Democrat-leaning ones, and that has accelerated since the pandemic. Now for some homicide data from Florida, because Florida's not safe for black people. Got to stay away from Florida. Now for some homicide data from Florida. I'll have a link to that, since it's not safe for blacks. And here's what I wrote on one of my articles. I'll link to that. You can go ahead and look this. Since Florida has good county level data, I'm going to add them because that's what I do. I like to look at it county by county if I can. Because you could have a state with a high homicide rate, high murder rate, and it could be just a handful of counties doing most of it. The rest of them are uber white and uber safe. Let's look at Florida counties that voted 60% or more for Donald Trump both times, 2016 and 2020, as well as the counties that voted for Hillary Clinton and the dementia-riddled fake president plugs Biden. So I'm not going to list off all the counties that voted for Trump 60% or more twice. There's a bunch of them. But anyway, from 2018 to 2020, those counties had a collective population of almost 11.2 million, and their homicide rate from 2018 to 2020 was 3.7 per 100,000, well below the national average. The two counties in Florida that voted, and Florida is definitely moving more towards the Republican side. If we did this under Obama, there would be a lot more counties that were very pro-Democrat, but they've turned, Democrat Party has turned Florida against them. Broward and Gadsden were the only two that voted overwhelmingly for Hillary and the dementia patient. Those two counties had a population from 2018 to 2020 collectively of almost 6 million, but their homicide rate was 6.138 per 100,000. That's higher than the national average. Now, Florida's homicide rate from 2018 to 2020 en masse, the whole state, was 5.433 per 100,000, slightly lower than the national average. So you can see the counties that are uber Democrat are much more violent than the ones that are uber Republican. Now for some uncomfortable data on arrests in Florida. Uh-oh. It's dangerous for black people down in Florida. In 2020, of the 844 arrests for murder, over 58% of the arrestees were black. In 2019, of the 787 arrests for murder in Florida, 56.8% of the arrestees were black. In 2018, of the 710 arrests for murder, 54.36% of the arrestees were black. And in 2017, there were 634 arrests for murder, and 58.51% of the arrestees were black. Seeing a trend here, see how the number of arrests for blacks increased each of those years as Black Lives Matter stoked the fires of racial tensions. They, meaning folks like Maxine Waters, Barack Obama, and rat-faced Ilhan Omar, they used these idiots like pawns, got them all ginned up, and hoped they would create enough chaos that all their opponents would submit. We won't submit, period. If you'd like your eyes to explode, see the supplemental homicide data, and I have a note there. See the note on the front page about light blue bars as it is related to negligent homicide. So On Florida's website, I have some supplemental homicide data. I calculated from 1996 to 2020, there were, excluding negligent manslaughter, aka negligent homicide, from 96 to 2020, there were 5,743 white-on-white criminal homicide / non-negligent manslaughter events. During the same time frame, there were 4,207 black-on-black offenses. Considering that white is a much larger percentage of Florida's population, the black-on-black criminal homicide rate in Florida is stratospheric. Don't forget, Black Lives Matter, but only when they're killed in altercations with the police. The young black men killed by other young black men in Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando, Tampa, etc. do not matter, and they don't sell newspapers. They get a little paragraph, and that's about it. George Floyd sells newspapers, even though thousands of George Floyds are snuffed out by other young black men in gangland / drugland killings every year. By the way, why aren't Asians slaughtering each other in droves down in the Sunshine State? You know why. I'm Asian. It's because they have two parents in the house, and daddy's there, and if they mess up, daddy will do something about it. Daddy teaches them how to be a man and how to solve problems without trying to beat everybody up. Like Jordan Neely, he solved every problem by intimidating people and trying to beat people up. And when he ran into someone who wasn't a little child or an old man or an old woman, well, you saw what happened. The people who are murdering black people in Florida are other black people most of the time. And lastly, a challenge to Democrats that I have yet to see answered. The most violent counties in America have beaucoup black-on-black murder, and they tend to overwhelmingly vote Democrat. Change my mind or debate me on it and get steamrolled. I probably won't bother with "this channel has no content" sock puppet accounts, though, as I've had a few unemployed Democrats on YouTube and other sites who have lots of free time just to close their accounts after the defeat and start again. So if you're not a friend and you have one of those patented accounts with nothing on them, I probably won't waste my time. My free time is valuable. Those people have nothing but free time. Have a nice day. And here's a clip from Dave Rubin where Mr. Derrick Johnson demonstrates that he is an absolute moron.
Regarding the national group's notice to certain travelers, we have no comment. However, on the economic diversification front, in just the last few years, Florida has moved into the #1 spot in the United States for black-owned businesses, and #2 for Hispanic, and #2 for women-owned businesses as well. When you hear those numbers, what they are saying is, look, African Americans and Hispanics are doing quite well here when it comes to running their own businesses and being able to make money here and being able to live decent lives. How do you address that with this new ban?
First of all, that's propaganda language. Over the last several years, it wasn't because of anything he did in policy. Florida, by geography, is an attractive place where people would like to go.
Reality is propaganda language. So there are more black businesses in Florida than anywhere, second for Hispanics, second for women. But that does not matter, man. You got scary Ron DeSantis. We saw this right before the show. I thought this was pretty spectacular. The chairman of the NAACP board of directors, his name is Leon Russell. Guess where he lives? Tampa, Florida. We've got to help that man. Should we start a GoFundMe? We will help to get Leon Russell out of Florida because it's bad for black people.